Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We just finished one interview with a Ward 5 council candidate, and we're now joined by Shelley Scott-England, who's also running in Ward 5 for the council position in the by-election that's happening on June 10th. Shelley, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Brian. Good morning. How is it this morning?
It's great. So tell me a little bit about yourself, if you could, and why you think the people in Ward 5 should vote for you.
Well, certainly. I'm a former educator. I own and operate a business here in Mississauga, and I've been involved in community for quite a long time. In fact, I would say that it was probably one of my first careers. I started working in community along with my parents many years ago in Jamaica. I am an immigrant to Canada. I've been living in Canada for the past 10 years. When I moved to Canada, I moved into Mississauga, and I've been in Mississauga since, and I don't intend to move anywhere else. So Mississauga is my home. So ultimately, when talking about, I know a lot of persons have asked, what is your experience and so on. And I say my experience is quite varied and quite long in community, in business, in education, in construction, several areas. That's something that you can find as well.
I was at that Ward 5 meet and greet, and people felt that Malton had been forgotten or not included in Mississauga. In fact, some people had suggested that Malton should join Brampton or should join Toronto instead of being part of Mississauga, because it was separated from the balance of Mississauga by Pearson Airport, by that big airport corporate zone, all the warehouses, all the industry, etc. It's a long way between Malton and Britannia, the south end of the ward. What do you think of that?
It is a long way, if we're thinking of it in isolating terms. But Malton is one of the oldest actual villages in Mississauga, in what constitutes Mississauga. So it's always been a part of Mississauga. And we've had that industrial area being built up between Britannia and Malton, but transporting from one side to the next isn't something that's new. I would not at all support Malton being separated from Mississauga and joining any other city. Malton is well placed where it is, and all we would need really is to bring some life back there. I've been traveling around through both Britannia and Malton extensively, knocking on doors and finding out really what the issues are, what some of the concerns are. And why I think persons might be speaking about separating is because they're feeling neglected. And I do understand in looking what it is that they're seeing when they open their door and hearing what their concerns are, seeing when persons are showing the receipts as to, I have been contacting someone about this or that for the longest time and not getting a response. It's that sense that maybe someone else will take better care of us. And what we want to let Maltonites know is, no, we are your representatives and we will be taking care of you. So it's bringing, I think, that sense of confidence back into our government that would be able to stop such a conversation.
Well, let me challenge you on that, if I could, for a second. So since 2014, you've had a councillor that's got more experience on city council than anyone, other than maybe Hazel McCallion, the former mayor. She's been involved in politics for 30 years or so. And before that, you had a councillor that then became mayor. And so you've actually had incredibly, what would seem to be, experienced and powerful politicians representing Malton. With that kind of situation, why would you be neglected?
So when I'm looking at the history of each candidate, each of the persons who have been there, one has been there way longer than the other. So the first person, I believe she is the person who has who can be credited with having started a BIA, and what that BIA was formed to represent. Some of that was fulfilled. The continuity of that, I would actually question, how it is that organization has developed. So the term had been short, and I would not say that there's not sufficient that you could probably say, you could measure then as to what might have happened there. The person who has been there longer out of those two persons that you mentioned, perhaps has struggled a little bit in connecting. And I'm going to give an example of what a conversation I had with a lady recently, Michelina. And I don't know if she's going to listen. Hi, Michelina. But she pointed out a few different things in terms of personality. Because I think often what we forget as individuals when we attain some of these positions is the persons who actually helped us to get to those places, and we serve those persons. It's not the other way around, really. It's a bit of a symbiotic relationship, but ultimately the people, residents, citizens come first, always. And when I'm listening to Michelina, and I'm using her words in comparing those two persons and a Hazel McCallion, what is the major difference is who remains in contact, in connection with people. That makes a huge difference. So we have AI and things like that now. So persons who are saying to me, policies and so on and so on and so on. Listen, you can write that into Chat GPT, and they can come back with what the problem is, what the solutions are, and so on. But what you cannot have is that having connection with people. And persons that I'm speaking to, being, knocking on their doors, they're saying they don't know anybody, they don't see anybody, they don't feel anyone. And that, I think, is a major difference between the persons that you've spoken about and a person such as Hazel McCallion. I respect everyone who enters such an office to take on such a role. There are several complexities that go along with that every single solitary day. And you have to remain sharp, but you also have to remain in contact with people. So what is lacking, I think, is a connection with people, ultimately.
So I happen to agree with you. I guess the contention that I'm trying to draw, and I'm not sure if you agree with this or not, but that the last two councillors that you've had in Ward 5 have had other ambitions, have wanted to be very involved in the whole city and wanted to move on in their political careers. And I question whether that has served Malton and Britannia well. Versus having someone that, is embedded in the community and really cares about the community and doesn't think about this as a stepping stone for further political ambition. And so I'm not saying one is right or wrong. I'm just asking you, what do you think? Is it best to have someone that's sort of all about the community in the ward, or someone that's using it as a stepping stone for higher office?
Now, so that I don't think the two have to be exclusive, number one. So coaching it as, a stepping stone and so on. I think what is more important is, while you are stepping, what are you doing? So I will never ever fault someone for their ambitions. Ambitions drive us. But while it is that we're driving to the next level, I don't think that we should be neglecting the passengers in our vehicle or neglecting the vehicle itself. So having the ambition to whether it is, to go for mayor or to go for whatever the case may be, kudos to you for having those ambitions. But stepping stone, looking at judging it that you are going to be, that this is just to move you to the next level. I cannot emphasize enough that we're not dealing with, arbitrary mechanics. We're dealing with people first and foremost. And in dealing with people, you're always, as a politician, you always need people. So neglect of the people will not at all serve your ambitions.
Great answer. As you're walking around and knocking on doors and talking to people, what do you think the big issues are? What are you hearing at the doors?
So from one side of the ward to the other side of the ward, there are some different concerns. As it relates to, so I'll tell you, funny enough, I don't hear a lot of housing. I hear some persons speaking about taxes, and we've had some discussions on that. I've heard persons talking about care of the environment, litter, garbage, neglect of property. I hear persons talking about permits. There's one man, for example, he says he wants to excuse me, that he's had a permit for quite a long time. Mentias, I think his name is, and he's had his permit. He can't do anything with it because he's in an area that's prone to flooding. And I question, how is it that you were given a permit in the first place, right? If this is a known issue, and then he has borrowed money and he's not able to do anything. So that speaks to stagnation. So a lot of persons are saying, we've been here for many years, and you find that there are some areas that you have persons who have been living there since the 70s, or one man even said that a few of his neighbors, he's on Etude, and he says his neighbors recently passed. They've been there since, I think it had been like the 40s. So these are long-standing residents in the community, and so their issues are watching their neighborhoods change in a way that they're uncomfortable with, that they're uncomfortable saying, hello to their neighbors, or they're uncomfortable even driving out of their homes. So safety, and the changes that are happening in their neighborhoods, and calling to persons to say, are some of these developments, is the integrity, is it safe for the persons who are living there, as well as the persons who are right next door, not getting responses. So that responsiveness is something that is common through, I think, the entire ward. The enforcement of some of these bylaws, one, cleanliness, as I mentioned, and just that whole sense of really not just homes as a community, but that peopling of a community that is, that a lot of persons are pining for. So
Okay, great. So last question. Why should people vote for you?
Now, I say very simply, I do have a long history of working not just with community here in Canada, as well as in Jamaica. I do understand how government works. I have, in fact, worked in government. I had a long career in education. Started as our kindergarten, well, we call it early childhood teacher, basic school, and went to actually teaching adults, and moving into the Ministry of Education, which would be somewhat similar to what we have here. And I remember when I started my career in education, I had been living abroad for a little while, went back to Jamaica, and I chose to go in the public school. And when I chose to go into public school, persons asked me, why would you go into public school? Because they would figure that I'm a prep school teacher. I said, no, I'm interested in the persons who are most needing of what it is that I have to offer. And when I started in my first paid job, I remember having 72 children in a class, and 72 children that were streamed. And so when you're a new teacher, you would go in and they give you the class that is doing the least. And at the end of 1 year, I was offered the second stream class out of 7. And I said, absolutely not. Because the children that were there were children who, it was more than, it wasn't aptitude. that had them performing as they were doing, but rather their circumstances and the supports that they had. And I fought long and hard with the ministry until I was there to actually, one, reduce class sizes, advocate for more resources for students, advocate for more training and support for teachers, and advocate also for parents, having an open door policy with parents, that parents are allowed in, and have that relationship being built between home, school, and community.
So you've done it once in education and you can do it again in Ward 5. Is that your pitch?
I absolutely can. I absolutely can, and I absolutely can with the support of the community. And
Do you have
that's what
a,
built.
sorry, do you have a website that people should go to if they want to check you out?
I do. So my website is shelleyforward5.ca.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. Hi,
Good luck
Kristen.
on
Good
good luck on
morning.
June 10th.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you today?
I'm so tired.
I can understand. And I see your wall behind you.
Yes, this is my generation. We all have this as our walls. So
We're going to take
I
a
don't
break for
know.
some messages and be back with another candidate in Ward 5 in just a minute. Thank you, everybody.